Good morning, friends.
Morning, sir.
I think we should start.
Yes, sir. We'll start in 2 minutes. We are just waiting for the participant to join in.
Okay,
In two
okay,
minutes, we will start.
okay.
तो नहीं गया बच्चों पर मैं तो सिर्फ ये पूछना थी कि हाँ केक है
Shrogato, I think we can start, right?
Sure, Dada. Dada, am I audible?
Yes, you are. You are. You are audible as well as visible. Okay. All right. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the second day international e-conference organized by New Literaria. Uh, the title of our conference this time is Brazen Realms: Exploring Intersections in Humanities and Social Science, and we are doing this conference in active collaboration with the Department of History, Humanities, Society, University of Rome, Vergata, Italy, and Department of English, Central University of Karnataka, India. We're extremely thankful to the two department for collaborating with us and putting hands in hands for this conference, the fifth iteration of the International E-Conference by New Literaria. So welcome to the second days of conference, and for this today we have two plenary talks back to back. After that, at 11:30, we will have our parallel sessions going on, and in the afternoon we have our valedictory session. So with that small note, without taking much time, I will just hand it over to Shovato, who will host the session, this plenary. Over to you, Shovato.
Uh, Thank you, Subhankar. Good morning. On behalf of the Dada, am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are audible.
Okay. Good morning. On behalf of the conference organizing committee, I cordially welcome you all to the second day of Fifth International E-Conference on Bridging Realms, Exploring Intersections in Humanities and Social Sciences, organized by New Literaria, an international journal of interdisciplinary studies in humanities in collaboration with Department of History, Humanities and Society, University of Rome Tor Vergata, Italy, and Department of English, Central University of Karnataka, India. We have among us Professor Dr. Joy Singh Sir, the chair of this plenary session, and Dr. Frank Caduce Sir, the plenary speaker of this session. And it is my immense pleasure and I feel honored to introduce the chair of this session, Professor Dr. Joy Singh Sir. Professor Dr. Joy Singh Sir is an associate professor in the Department of English Literature, the English and Foreign Language University, Hyderabad, India. His areas of research interest encompass contemporary theory, post-colonial theory and literature, Indian writing in English, diaspora literature, feminism, cultural studies, Orientalism, and digital humanities. He is actively engaged in teaching, research, and research guidance. He has published 38 papers in different international and national journals and anthologies, out of which there are four Scopus in these journals. He has also presented 75 papers in various national and international seminars in India and abroad. He has been invited to deliver lectures as a resource person and plenary speakers in various institutes. He has been invited to deliver lectures in orientation program, and to his credit, he has four international visits and one international funding. His international assignments includes he is the member of panel for research Royal University of Bhutan, and he has chaired various sessions in seminars. He has remarkably contributed to Parable International English to Hindi Dictionary by Abhay Maurya, and he has four newspaper publications to his credit, like Interview with Amitabh Ghosh, published in Deccan Chronicle, dated 6 August 2015, Problems of Laughter and the Comic, published in the Hindustan Times, dated 29th of July 2017. He is a member of the review and editorial boards for several esteemed research journals, contributing his expertise.
Sugatoji, just cut it short. Enough.
Okay, okay. And Okay, and he's a member of the review board like the Postcolonial Text and the Asian Journal of Humanities and Social Sciences. And before handover, I'll request all the participants, if you have any question, queries, or observations, please drop in the chat box. Our chairpersons might ask to read the question. So the virtual platform is yours, sir. Over to you, sir.
Sugato Sahuji, thank you. It's my pleasure to be part of this conference where we have excellent scholars and excellent discussion is going on the serious issues. Now I welcome Dr. French G. Croesus, who is a visiting professor of writing at the Mount National University, South Korea. Dr. Frank's work focuses on issues of sociality, masculinity, and education. Dr. Frank has worked and lectured in more than a dozen countries, and is the author of monograph on education in sexuality and sociality, heteronormativity on campus, and also co-authored another book, Masculinity Under Neoliberalism. And in addition to this scholarship and teaching, Dr. Frank is also a poet whose writings has appeared internationally in a wide variety of literary journals. It's it will be really a treat to listen to Dr. Frank, who worked on completely new issues like masculinity under neoliberalism, education in sexuality and society, heteronormativity on campus. And today, Dr. Frank will speak on Between Documentary and Utopia, Poetry as a Method. It will be a treat to listen what a poet says critically about poetry. Dr. Frank, now I welcome you and session is over to you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. That is far, far, far too kind. I'm so appreciative of it, and I'm always happy to be here speaking. I spoke at one of the other New Literati conferences, Literaria conferences. So to try and be as brief as possible, there's things that I want us to think about in thinking through poetry as a first is poetry as a space that stretches just outside of the individual into kind of the waves of your societalness. Two, that poetry is unbounded in ways by requirements for simple facticity and is instead rooted in the intertwine themselves into lives and results in unique ways that three, poetry is at its best, not always, unrelenting in its forcefulness of refuting moral requirements of a static present and some obscured future that we're not totally. Instead, provisioning poetry is provision us a kind of fractured portrait of all of these all at once. And then fourth, that poetry is, for these reasons, a really deep methodological tool for research, for us to think about, to use in our research, to fulfill the broadest and deepest goals of research, which is to kind of find some kind of way of documenting the worlds that we are seeking to enter, right? So I'm going to try and be brief and leave some time for us to have a conversation at the end. So in this way, note that this is much more provocative than proof-driven, and my goal is to more begin a dialogue and have us to start thinking about things rather than kind of come into conclusive answers. If we take poetry as a space, which is a form of rhetorical kind of theoretical maneuver, and remember that in spaces, quote, memory and imagination remain associated and work deeply, from Bakelard, right? Then we can begin to see the ways that such a provisions us as researchers with a capaciousness intertwined between the kind of branches of facticity and possibility, between the past, the now, and the oncoming yet unwritten future. A key poetic device often is stretches the entire history of poetry, I would say, as a genre, is the use of voice of the other than self, whether that's narrator or personification, right? In a variety of different ways, poetry uses voice that's outside of the author as themselves selfhood, right? In this, then, right, poetry is not just a space itself, by which space is created between the author and the poem, right? Allows them then to create a distance between even who the supposed author is in the poem itself, right? This way, simultaneously, both kind of an as is of the author, right? Giving that, and a there is somewhere just beyond the author themselves, in towards something that they themselves are making. This space created by poetry is productive, I would argue, in much the same way as the space between researcher, right? Which kind of gets to a question of in-group and out-group research, right? And the role of a researcher as or outside of the community topic that they're researching. As a methodological tool, then, poetry, the author, the poet, the person writing the poem in this sense, in whatever community we're, a further space even then, therefore, for opening up some and distancing from the event, the topic, the thing that's being discussed. Poetry in this use, unlike statistics, is not flattening of the data or the lived experience, but requires it already to be imbricated with affect and the lives that are present in them. The artist Bells Howard notes that, quote, "We are conditioned to think in words instead of pictures and feelings. More likely, we are conditioned to translate our thoughts from feelings and images into words." All right. Most all research finds its ways into words, though there is obviously research that is not word-driven. Yet, research seeks to disbar feelings, the affect, and the fray, removing them from the processing of the matter, whether that's material or immaterial matter itself, right? In this, then, our words and feelings can be rendered ineffable by the data, by this datafication research. This is sometimes, in a way, something foundational to research, where it constitutes and renders down in the way that we talk about cooking, rendering, seeking of action that happens in the process, where the researcher can sometimes that there is a significant process in that rendering, and one that is not itself neutral, right? What if we thought in this of poetry as a method, as a way of not simply collecting more data, though I would argue it is distinctly more, but as a process of helping to do the rendering and building a roadmap for the data as something that is alive, something that is moving, fluid. Willem Flusser, a wonderful theoretician, speaks about communication as requiring an apt amount of distance to begin to occur. He gives the example of himself. He's a Czech-born Brazilian, speaking with a member of China's Red Guard. He says that in this example, there's too much distance for substantive communication. And then he gives another example of somebody from his own hometown. And he says that sometimes in those cases, there is not enough distance for communication to really, truly occur. Because for Flusser, communication requires not just statements or words or kind of linguistic similarity or sharedness, seen an addressing of new information, the grappling outside of ourselves, outside of our understanding. And so if we are too far, we don't have the capacity to do that grappling. And if we are sometimes there's not enough new information to share for us to truly begin doing. In this, I would point to poetry provides us all a way of beginning to open up, seeing the distance, giving us some semblance of what that is, and shining a light on this distance and allowing it to kind of form shadows, creating new distances in different layouts and geographies. As a methodological tool, there, participant, the researcher, the reader, each party of it intertwined with a new distance and is able, therefore, to communicate better, more thoroughly, right? Whatever words about that. When we conduct research, and again, we come from a variety of different backgrounds, we're seeking out two general things, and this is tactic. The first is documentation, right? The detailing of facts, such that a hypothesis could be demonstrated or proven, right? This often occurs in various different ways and to varying degrees, depending on the discipline that we come from. The second thing that research does make some type of demand. Sometimes this demand, as I'm calling it, can be native. Other times it is direct and unambiguous. Think here of a policy document, the state of affairs, right? And then make it happen. What are suggestions? Slightly worded demands. If we understand research, then poetry comes as a genre to be capable of these tasks. For there's no poetry that does not document its creation, its place of origin, its conditions. And while much of modern poetry can be seen to be kind of demandless, the best of poetry in all ages asked its reader to conduct a change upon having been read. Yanis Ritsos, the Greek communist poet, who was awarded the Lenin Peace Prize for recognizing the impact his poetry had on strengthening peace globally, right? First off, the giving of this such prize already accounts for some impact that poetry can have, right? But we for those, I don't know if everyone knows Ritsos, but he had multiple exiles from his homeland, right? Suggesting very firmly to my mind that his poetry made a lot of demands and that some people did not agree with his demands. One of his most famous poems, Epitaphios, which translates as funeral procession, documents the 1936 strike and protests of tobacco workers in Thessaloniki and the dictatorial workers. The poem then goes on to demand from the reader, from the government, from Greeks, people writ large, some form of pushback on that, right? The poem's demand in this case was so strong, so deep, that the book was burned just next to the Acropolis in Athens, and further than that, was set to music multiple times And the orchestrations were so provocative that they themselves caused political debate. Which leads to a question about that poets regularly speak about have some requirement true, right, truthfulness, yet nor is it meant to be altogether false. Shape in a poem to feelings, to an experience, to the world, to a message. And that poetry is a genre and practice, capacity to exist somewhere between these ventures, side of the walls of what's called the principle of, and towards a many valued logic, right? When we talk about oftentimes in Western forms of logic making, they talk about things as either true or false, and that can be oftentimes the logic tree in toto. Yet there's a variety of multi-valued logic paradigms that can include things that are far beyond true and false, to include it may be true and true only, false and false only, both true and false, and neither true nor false. And in this, poetry is so good at documenting the things that are not exactly true nor exactly false, and shining lights on the way that this can be helpful for us. Wallace Stevens, an American 20th century poet, summed up much of this by noting that first, it is life that one is trying to get at in poetry. And that sounds very much to me like research. And he continues, and secondly, that the poem is the cry of its occasion. These are summative of poetry's fundamental goals in the way that, as a genre, poetry provisions us collectively with a method of coming to grips with life, with events, with the occasions of our continued living and dying. Michael Leong, in a similar fashion, noted in a recent interview that poetry, quote, is tied up with how it productively messes with what we productively thought were stable truths, and adds to this that poetry is foundingly untimely. In this, again, I think research would do well to integrate some of these ways of engaging and encountering the world. The historian Roderick Beaton reminds us that we rely on perceptions of the past to establish our own identity in the present. In a world ever more threatened, he says, by the clash of mutually exclusive monolithic identities, we might all do well to reflect on the ways in which these identities come to be formed and also adapted as the world around changes, right? This is a strong reminder to us when we think about research and data. There is no piece of data, no today, that isn't already intertwined with the past or with the just gone. It says, right? There's no individual singular and outside of context, except for on a very merely mundane level. Right? And in thinking, therefore, about poetry as a methodological tool, it's not necessarily to suggest that it is able entirely to unhinge or divest these complications from data or our findings, but in fact that it provides us as researchers more clarity on these matters. We see ourselves as actors stepping into a moment in the stream of time. Poetry is a temporal imbricator, able to act as a raft for us in this river, just out of our reach, right? Time is always just out of our reach. And this is true in that way for both the materials related to individuals, right, or to the wider scope of community and history entirely. What I've tried to say here very quickly, and I'm trying to be conscious of, poetry gives us tomorrows that are often stricken off from the realm of possible other research methods or genres. And that therefore, methodologically, it provides us with a space to see that sky just above the trees and be part of a sort of collective act of painting, detailing a place that is not yet existent. And that is the key element, from my mind, of any good research data. There's a quote from the recently departed Frederick Jameson that says, in the 1960s, many people came to realize that in a true revolutionary collective experience, what comes into being is not a faceless or anonymous crowd or mass, but rather a new level of being in which individuality is not effaced, but completed by collectivity. It is this sense of gaining fullness that I've hoped to point to with the use of poetry as a tool for our research in the way that we do research, reckoning with the subject, acting upon the present toward the future, and recognizing that humans are feeling animals who are both in situ and in process. And scholars, all of us, myself included, can ring fence ourselves off from the world's on the boundaries of the work that we are doing at that moment, or the discipline we are doing it in, or the method that we're using at that. And we can get somewhat myopic in our vision of what is entailed by our project. My goal, very simply, has been just for us to take a moment and pause and ask us to think of difficult but not impossible, to live outside of a fortification of discipline. The world in poetry is wide open and inviting, asking us to think about what we choose to include, what we choose to exclude, and seeing some of the ways that poetry can open up new avenues for inclusion in our research.
Uh, Dr. Frank, thank you for giving such a wonderful lecture where poetry itself becomes a method to look at the world and to react. Your idea is quite different from the traditional idea where a poet is divinely inspired, stays in vacuum and creates something. So you gave a new dimension to the understanding of poetry, where poetry is a materialistic thing where we react to the material realities, and poetry becomes not simply imaginative work, rather a critical work as well. So very aptly uh, gave us a new idea to look at the poetry, where a poet himself becomes a critic. So the line between the poet and a critic is already blurred, and you make it very clear that they are not two different things. In many cases, they are the one and the same thing. So thank you for giving this wonderful lecture. Now I open the session for question answer. People who have questions, they can put their questions in the chat box. And Dr. Frank, please check that chat box, and if anybody puts a question, please respond to that question. Somebody put the question. Yeah, please, the participants, if you have any question, please put it in the chat box. Yeah, Shubhankar Datta has raised hand.
So meanwhile, others put their question. If I can ask something to Professor Katyush,
Yes, 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 you can.
I do have a questions regarding like you are talking about how poetry also becomes a form of resistance in that matter. So I was thinking of the very act of writing poetry as a form of performance, how it also becomes a sort of resistance, maybe in the South Asian and the global South context. If you think of that, then there are protest movement and stuffs like that whenever it is going on. The very act of writing that then and there in that particular space of it, the space of protest or the space of any sort of activism, the act of writing it on a paper or maybe on a wall or maybe on a piece of cloth, how do you see that very act of writing it, the performance of poetry in that sense, if I can call it?
I think that I would definitely call the act of writing poetry resistance, right? In some contexts, the act of just declaring, the act of just declaring declaring a voice, right? The enunciation of words into the world saying I have a voice, right? And I think first off, your question's wonderful, and I think of someone like Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who notes specifically, right, not just the act of writing, but the language in which we use it, right? And poetry is so heavily rooted in the language that we root, right? And so, like, just writing poetry or just writing something in the indigenous tongue, right? Like, immediately is an act of resistance. to whatever oversight, whatever colonial, imperialist, nationalist project, right? The simple act of doing that is inherently resistance, and not just because I say so, but because the state says so. Their demonstrative reaction
Yeah.
is very clear that that's obviously a form of protest. Yeah,
It's true. Also, it's kind of the earlier ways of reciting poetry in the folklore, the very act of doing poetry or the conversational poetry that also takes us to that sort of creating voice that you are kind of pointing out, creating a identity of oneself through poetry or through the recitation of the poetry. Yeah, thank you.
yeah,
Thank you so much.
yeah. And I think of great traditions of collaborative poetry, right? Whether we go back all the way like Homer, right, is almost certainly a
Yeah.
collaborative thing, or like Renga, when we look in Japanese traditional poetry,
Hmm.
Renga,
Hmm.
and just the sheer act of building something together, right, is pushing things, and it counters the narrative of poetry as hyper individualistic and right so self-focused, right, and that's a very thin version of poetry, and it's yeah. I have to assume there's other questions. I said a lot of really wild out there stuff. Somebody has to have other questions or criticisms. I would take open criticisms.
Participant, also you can raise your hands in that case. If you can't put it in the chat box, I will unmute you and you can go ahead with your question or observation on that matter.
I think people are fully satisfied.
Yeah, they're
Uh,
kind of processing.
while listening to Dr. Frank, I am reminded of a Hindi poem. I'm not a poet, but someone else's poem. I will recite two, three lines and then I will explain what the poet says and how it is related to Dr. Frank.
Mm.
कहना मुश्किल है न कहना आसान कहते चले जाना न कहने जैसा है और बहुत आसान so to say something is difficult to keep quiet is easy but saying whatever saying and saying just keep on talking that is very easy and that has no meaning at all so Dr. Frank also said almost the same thing where poetry is seen as something for understanding and analyzing the present and future of not only the individual but of the community as well, theorizing the import of poetry as a method for documenting today, as an opportunity for building tomorrow. So, with this definition given by Dr. Frank, a poet is going to be the critic of the world. If a poet supports the hegemonic powers, in that case, I don't think that poet can be called a poet. Rather, that poet is a poetaster who just makes the rhymes. Rhymester, we can say, not a poet. So, with these things from my side, I hand over the session to Sogato Sahu to conclude it. Sogato.
Can I just say one thing? That
Yeah,
first off,
yeah, sure.
thank
Most
you,
welcome, sir.
thank you for sharing that poem. I would love it if you could put in the chat what poem that is, if you know the title or author. And I love the way you phrased, right, like a poet has to be a critic of the world, otherwise are they even a poet, right? Which is to say, right, like really good art is either critical or propaganda. Like
Yeah.
if we're forced into a binary, those that is one of the ways that people talk about that type of thing. I love it. That's such a great insight.
So right now I don't have the book with me.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe later on we can send it to
yeah, yeah.
Professor. Yeah, we can mail it to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Joyce sir, for sharing the session very insightfully and wonderfully, and we are really grateful for you. And I would like to thank Professor Frank Elsie sir for his wonderful delivery, and we are really very enriched and enlightened with his wonderful delivery, sir. Thank you, sir, and thank you all the participants for making this session a great success. Over to you, Sundar.
Thank you and bye to everybody. We'll
Thank you.
meet.
Okay, so this brings to us the end of the first plenary talk. We have another plenary talk following this. Professor Geeta BJ from Central University of Tamil Nadu have already joined. We are just waiting for our chairperson to join in. He's facing a bit of technical issues. In 1 2 minutes, he will be here in the meet.
I think Ujjwal sir has joined. Please enable.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, yes, I'm doing that. Uh, Can you let me know with which name he joined? I think it's not with his
Yeah,
own
yeah.
name.
1 minute, please.
Yeah, just ask him.
It is Professor Ujjwal Jana.
Ah, okay, okay, okay. Just a second. Yeah, yeah, got it. Yeah, he can unmute himself now. You can go ahead, Sanjay, now.
Uh,
Sorry for the delay.
yes, I've been able to join, and
Hi, Professor. Good morning. Good morning, sir.
yes, good morning, everybody.
Thank you, sir,
Sanjay,
for
you can.
joining
Yeah.
us. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, sir, for joining us. And sorry, everyone, for the technical problems that we faced. So I would take this opportunity to introduce Ujjwal sir, to everyone. Dr. Ujjwal Jana is professor in the Department of English, Faculty of Arts, University of Delhi. His areas of interests are Indian poetics, literary studies, translation studies, and digital humanities. He has published several research papers in peer-reviewed national and international journals. He is the co-editor of Green Symphony, Studies in Eco-Criticism, Ecological Criticism for Our Times, Literature, Nature, and Critical Inquiry, Ecological Criticism for Our Times, Literature, Nature, and Critical Inquiry, and Subaltern Vision, a study in post-colonial India, and so on. He was a Fulbright visiting lecturer Indian Studies Program, Indiana University, Bloomington, USA. He was nominated for Commonwealth Academic Staff Fellowship in UK for the year 2013. He has been awarded the Sahitya Academy Travel Grant Award in 2014. He was visiting faculty in the Department of English, Leipzig University in 2014, sponsored by ICSSR. He was visiting faculty in the Department of English, University of Johannesburg, South Africa. He has been awarded with the MHRD Government of India funded international collaborative project in digital humanities in Indian Dream under SPARC. He was elected for Faculty Mobility Award sponsored by Shastri Indo-Canadian Institute and Ministry of Human Resources. Dr. Jana was awarded with a Hungarian state scholarship in the academic year 2021-22, and Dr. Jana's Bengali translation of Amit Chaudhary's Sahitya Academy Award-winning English novel A New World by the Sahitya Academy, India's National Academy of Letters, has been published in 2021. Dr. Jana has been awarded a Hungarian state scholarship in 2022-23, funded by Tempest Foundation of the Government of Hungary to carry out a collaborative research at the ELTE Department of English Studies, Budapest, Hungary. Professor Jana has edited an anthology on digital culture in humanities contemporary trends published by ABS Book, a Delhi-based publishing house, in January 2023. Thank you so much, sir. I'll like to ask you to take charge of the session now.
Thank you, Sanchari, for this generous introduction. I would like to begin by thanking the organizers for having me here, and extremely sorry for this technical snag. And without any further delay, I would like to request Professor Gita, Professor and Head Department of English, Central University, Tamil Nadu, to go ahead with our presentation, post-humanism and the question of human. So I will request Professor Gita to kind of take 25 to 30 minutes, and then it will be followed by question answers. And with this note, I request Professor Gita to take over. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the organizing committee for this wonderful opportunity. And is the screen visible?
Yes, ma'am, it's visible.
Yes, the
Yes,
screen is visible.
Okay. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to present in this international conference. The topic that today I'm going to present is post-humanism and the question of human. So this is the most pertinent topic as far as the humanism is concerned, where exactly humanism is heading towards, whether we are heading towards anti-humanism or post-humanism or transhumanism or meta-humanism. There are a lot more isms are emerging due to the impact of biotechnology, engineering in biotechnology, genomic morphology, a lot of genetic, development, and a lot of techno-related advancement is happening, and human life itself is human body, for that matter, itself is possessed to this question of where this body, the body of human, how we can philosophize this body of human, and what is this human being, the existence. There are a lot of questions pertaining with this body and human being in existence perspectives. There are a lot of perspectives emerging because of the amalgamation of technology with human existence. And also, we have to think right now from the perspective of Anthropocene, what exactly the repercussions of the impact of technology, the impact of human exploitation towards environment, towards nature, towards all sorts of species. So there is a sort of emergence, a sort of question, a sort of analysis, a sort of self-reflection regarding the invitation or decentering of anthropocentrism and invitation to the speciesism, non-human animals. In fact, we are getting, we are going to, at the end of this session, I'm going to introduce a term, human animal. So that is where the philosophical post-human entering into. So this is a very short introduction. Let me go to the slides. Does the screen slides moving?
No, ma'am, it did not.
Okay. Now?
Yeah, it didn't. It didn't.
Okay. Is it now visible? Yeah. Yes. Yes. So so when it comes to post-human, I need to describe certain few things before this post-human aspect. Like whenever it comes to the understanding of human life and human consciousness, even the entire world aspect, there are two components which seems to be inevitable. They are reality and identity, through which that major concern of all our discourses happening. In fact, all the other discourses are entwined towards this identity and reality. And this particular concepts, especially the identity discourses, they emerged during this Renaissance period, and thereafter, during especially in the Enlightenment period, the concept of the cult individualism was emerging. And that seems to be from the Renaissance period till the Enlightenment period, how the human species they invigorated, they established this anthropocentric concepts, the discourses, all our progresses that happening in the society is entirely based on this cult image of individualism and subjectivity. And of course, when it comes to literature also, that you might have seen that how our literature till the period of Victorian age, especially during Romantic period and Victorian period, that the key factor that remind for a discussion, whether be it on poetry, be it on any other genre, it seems to be almost like the subjective consciousness and subjective understanding, and whatever is just a minute, I'm missing the call. So subjective analysis is what seems to be the discussion, the major discussion till the Victorian period. So even up to modern period, I would say it is in postmodern period there was a kind of deconstruction happening where the plurality and the humanness, the individuality, the subjectivity is being questioned, and objectivity and the peripheral factors are coming towards centered. So post-humanism also starts from this postmodern pluralistic and deconstructive notions. So especially post-humanism emerges along with other emerging, technological advancements, postmodern plurality. All this, they are entwined. Especially onto epistemological, ethical, and praxis and philosophy of mediation approached as a post-humanism. And in fact, post-anthroposm and post-dualism is being deconstructed, especially anthropocentrism and dualism, because our discourse is basically done with a dualistic concept like man, women, all this human and animal. So post-humanism persists its analysis, its question, and its consciousness in post-anthropocentrism and post-dualism in order to bring out an alterity. So that is the smaller definition about post-humanism. And as I said earlier, it emerged along with the postmodernism, because in postmodernism we have seen that how radical destruction of a neutral subject was happening. So there was this neutral subject that was prevailing till this modernism period. This neutral subject is male, white male, and all this the anthropocentric identity. And Rosie Braidotti, a famous post-humanist, and she, in her book Metamorphosis Towards a Materialist Theory of Becoming, she, as I would like to quote the lines, postmodernity is notoriously the age of proliferating differences, the devalued others, modern subjects, women, the ethnic or racialized other, and nature, or yet others, written with a vengeance. So post-humanism starts from these kind of, from feminism, from post-anthropocentric consciousness and all this. And again, I would like to quote from Ihab Asan, who seems to be the first person who coined the word post-humanism. On some deeper level of its transformation, it still reaches for something larger, something other, which some call post-humanism. So this is seems to be the the beginning of post-humanism. In fact, philosophical post-humanism also makes a kind of a reflection on humanism in terms of what sort of omissions has happened, what are the omissions in the name of anthropocentrism happened towards other species, non-human animals and other sorts of, within humans also, in terms of racial differences, in terms of gender differences, in terms of economical factors. All these things were omitted during these humanistic aspects. So post-humanism, along with the postmodernistic techniques and the discourses, it wanted to gel with these discourses and wanted to address whatever is omitted. At the same time, what are the developments that are required in a progressive manner. As far as posthumanism and transhumanism is concerned, posthumanism, it is something which is referred as the next phase of evolution, whereas transhumanism is a kind of a symbolic move of going beyond the human. And both of these, discourses, post-humanism, in fact, it started from post-modernism, whereas transhumanism started from enlightenment. So the differences between post-humanism and transhumanism is that transhumanism problematized the current understanding of human through the possibilities within biological evolution, physical and cognitive enhancement. So transhumanism still keeps holding humanism, and it wanted to bring in all sorts of body configurations. It wanted to enhance the body configurations of a human body. So that is the major difference between post-humanism and transhumanism. Whereas post-humanism wanted to throw out all sorts of centering aspects, whereas transhumanism wanted to keep humanism at the center, humans at the center, and wanted to bring all sorts of advancement and enhancement using this technology. So that is one major difference between transhumanism. But though transhumanism is part of bifurcation of posthumanism, it has its own different outlook. And further, it opts for radical transformation of the human condition using technologies. For instance, any genetic factors, any sort of illness and diseases. It wanted to address at the preliminary stage itself. So that though it seems to be good for the condition of the human uh, body and diseaselessness, there are certain ethical aspects that we will be discussing in the latest slides. It suggests diversity and multiplicity, replacing the biological body and becoming post-human. So transhumanism also tries to become a post-human by getting into or utilizing all the technological factors, but yet there are certain differences between transhumanism and posthumanism. That is what we have to understand. I would like to quote here Max Moore's quotation: by thoughtfully, carefully, and yet bodily applying technology to ourselves, we can become something no longer accurately described as human. We can become post-human. You would have seen that all our technological advancement, which helps us to keep some pacemakers, prosthesis, other technology-based instruments in human bodies when it comes to disease-oriented. As far as disease-oriented is concerned, it is good, but there are some fab matters where for some sort of bodily enhancement, just because few sect of people are economically stronger, economically powerful, they wanted to enhance their lifespan. And if that is being done, there lies the question of ethical interest. As far as the origin of transhumanism concerned, we have certain anecdotes and some references starting from Dante's Divine Commedia, and even in T.S. Eliot's Cocktail Party, where he questions about the human existence within the prevailing modernity, and also this particular work, The Future of Mankind, and this phenomenon of man. These are some of the very important books where we can find the origin of transhumanism, and especially Huxley seems to be the person who coined the term transhumanism in his major work called New Bottles for New Wines. And why what was his vision on anthropocentric? So there I would like to once again quote from his own book, New Bottles for New Wines. We need a name for this new belief. Perhaps transhumanism will serve man remaining man, but transcending himself by realizing new possibilities of and for his human nature. So transhumanism, the beyond humanism is what is attempting. The bodily changes, the enhancement is what is being done with the transhumanism. As I said earlier, it started with the Enlightenment and the prime focus of transhumanism is progress and rationality. As far as transhumanism, we have to see that how humanism is transferred into transhumanist ontological endorsement of science and technology. And in fact, it landed up this beyond humanism as ultra-humanism. So many of this transhumanist generation, they wanted to become ultra-humans. The humanist understanding is augmented. So that is the condition prevailing in transhumanism. Transhumanism also does not critically engage with the Enlightenment as did by Foucault. In terms of Foucault, everything is a political narrative. Everything is macro and micro physics of power. But with respect to transhumanism, there is nothing of that sort of critical engage is happening. And that is where posthumanism differs from transhumanism. For example, if you take this notion of progress as during this Enlightenment period, it was a kind of a false promise given by scientific advancement and inventions. And the repercussion we have seen, how science and technology can be utilized for wrong purpose. And we have witnessed World War I and II as a major illustration. The impact of atom bomb seems to illustrate how scientific advancement is both progressive and regressive. Also, this nuclear bombs and how the diseases, cancerous diseases are spreading everywhere. So this is a kind of a praxis of coexistence between human and non-human species. So that is the thing we have to understand. Also, where we have to critically engage with racial studies, feminism, animal studies, which demonstrated how human as a rational animal had discriminated humans from non-humans and other sorts of species, women, children, everything by privileging men for generations of discriminations. So this is where post-humanism understands and brings the changes in the social milieu. As far as transhumanism and technological enhancement is concerned, transhumanism helps to transcend the finitude of life by reassessing the biological bodies for potential progress and strives towards a radical life extension and digital immortality. So this digital immortality is something very important. How human body is being digitally designed, even the within embryo, the child can be detected with whether any genetic diseases is there. So all kind of digital immortality happens at the preliminary stage with, in terms of transhumanism. Genetic engineering and nanotechnology will abolish suffering in all sentient life. The complete abolition of suffering in Homo sapiens. This is what the comment made by David Pearce, and in fact he framed a term called paradise engineering, redesigning the global ecosystem. So in terms of scientific advancement, this is what is happening, paradise engineering, redesigning the global ecosystem. Also in transhuman discourse, how technology is the drive to fulfill all the desires of human being and to bring out, in order to meet out a radical life of extension. So this becomes a kind of a platform for human beings to fulfill this paradise of engineering or a digital immortality or a life extension or a radical life of extension can be attained in terms of technology, and how the redesigning, according to Max More, this is a one important concept: morphological freedom through surgery, genetic engineering, nanotechnology. This is known as biohacking community. So those who do all this sort of morphological changes can be termed as biohacking community. So whatever is damaged in human body that can be transplanted, that can be cured with the help of technology in future. So this leads to this kind of hacking community. And further, I would like to quote Andra Sandberg's quotation, like there are legitimate limits of morphological freedom when it causes harm to others or harm to oneself. So this is the caution. This is the ethical responsibility that when human beings go for such sort of transformation, they have to see whether any sort of harm is happening to anybody. So that legal issue is bound. So that care should be taken by people around. Further, Natasha Moore, she has coined the term primo post-human. Well, who is this primo post-human? The primo post-human is one who is human nature is at a crossroads, challenging what it means to be biological. That is, nature as accidental design, challenging our own biology. So no longer in future, we may not find the biological human being, but rather a mixture of digital or digital immortality, or these kinds of human beings are more possible in future. And those people can be termed as primo post-humans. Okay, so their biology is not sanctified out and out as primary biological thing, but it is a mixture. It's a kind of conglomerations of synthetic human beings only. So the primal figure is one who is an ageless, replaceable, upgradable genes. So when we compare this primal figure with the normal human body has limited age, so death is there, lifespan is limited, so the genes are very, it will wear out. So that is the difference between primo posthumans and the normal posthumans. So transhumanism, provides such platforms. It opens up such platforms within posthuman premises, the possibilities for primo posthumans. But as humans, we have to check the ethical, questions here. Further, I would like to quote one more quotation from Ray Kurzweil, and he says, "We will continue to have human bodies, but they will become morphable projections of our intelligence. Ultimately, software-based humans will be vastly extended beyond the severe limitations of humans as we know them today." So dualistic, we, the mind, versus they, the bodies. Human intelligence providing the means for the next stage of evolution, which is technology. So technology will bring in all these changes in human body. And what are the changes that can be done through this technology? We'll see now. Posthuman sees technology as a human outfit, not as the main focus new Ludit. That is wrestling with the transhumanism. So this is known as technogenesis. So we are heading towards technogenesis, and here it is pertinent to quote how Heidegger, in his The Question Concerning Technology, he defined what is technology as althea. Althea means revealing. Revealing in terms of biases. Revealing is a sort of godliness, creation. Revealing can be related with the creations. So technology can be compared with revealing sort of or creating a sort of a process. So it creates new avenues of possibilities of human extension, human expansion, life expansion, we can say. On the other hand, he framed another term called enframing, which looks at nature with its limited revelation. For instance, the modern physics seems to be as modern physics is considered as the exact science. Other majors of sciences or other different types of sciences is not considered as comes under into the premises of science. Only modern physics is considered in terms of utilitarian purpose, in terms of measures, in terms of availability. For instance, nature, how it is in terms of physics or modern sciences, how it is measured or how it is looked upon. Nature is nothing but a standing reservoir in terms of soil, in terms of water. Okay, so nature is enframed. Nature is the elements of nature is looked upon as a sort of a commodity, nothing beyond that. And as well as when it comes to physics, science, physics is considered as the only premises or only proper science. It is systematized and humanized, human need enlightenment. So transhumanism sets its root here. How exploiting this natural elements. Posthumanism, for instance, how technology cannot be reduced to mere means. So it says that you cannot reduce the importance of technology as just a sort of a means as done in transhumanism. There is one sort of a fear as far as the present generation is concerned when we involve or when we incorporate entirely technology. And one fear, as far as United States of America is concerned, the fear of artificial intelligence domination, replacing human mastery. So this is the fear that the present millennium people they have, that if you would have seen this movie Wall-E also, where artificial intelligence is taking a upper hand over human beings, and human beings are nothing but a kind of a puppet in the hands of artificial intelligence. So they were taken to a distant planet where there were no plants, nothing is there for them. They never seen this nature. So artificial intelligence prevents them to encounter with the nature, because if they come to know the prevalence of nature, they will come back to Earth. So fortunately, there was only one plant was alive, and the robo, the protagonist of the movie, it brings and it wanted to preserve this Earth, and life survives in that movie. So, like that, there is a fear that how artificial intelligence, we would have seen such things in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein's also. So, there is always a sort of a fear that how the technology, the scientific inventions may dominate human races. So, that is a kind of a threat is always there, which slips human control, which may slip human control. And what is more dangerous is not technology, but the mystery of its application. So, how human beings utilize, technology for the wrong purpose is what is to be afraid of, not technology itself. This is the perspective of posthumanism, and and the threat is essence, the human being's essence, not technology itself. Itself. Technology is not neutral. There is no way back. So this is where we have to understand how Anthropocene is being deliberated here, that there is no way back. Once we started a passage with the destruction of nature or the application of technology, there is no way back. So the environment will not be the same as it was before. It keeps changing along with the changes that we brought in terms of science and technology, in terms of every aspect. Nature will not be the same. So we have brought all the changes, and there is no turning back, is what post-humanist concern is. As far as technology in post-humanism is concerned, whenever we talk about this technology and post-humanism, we should incorporate how the other, feminism, which talks about women's body embodiment, because the self of women is being relegated. So how feminism or feminism fight for their own embodiment. Similar such things happens with the post-humanism for the claim of embodiment, when transhumanism does all the damages with the biological propriety of human beings. Also, we have to discuss about the cyborg, dismantling dualism between man and women, animal and human, physical and non-physical, and it wanted to break away all the boundaries. So that is the concern of posthumanism, wanted to break away all these boundaries, just like postmodernism. Now, coming to this anti-humanism, anti-humanism is not a homogeneous progress. It is development.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so sorry. I mean, could you please wind up your presentation, because I have been asked to, remind. I mean, another 5 to 6 minutes. I mean,
Yes, 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 yes,
sorry
sir.
for the interruption. So sorry for the interruption.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I will come to, yes. So as far as human is concerned, the historical notion in the presence of humanizing. Humanizing is not a noun, but actually a verb, which can be paralleled with gender, how the othering process is happening. So human is actually situated by a negative reduction of the others, exclusion marked as inhuman, subhuman, less than human, all these aspects. So, so these are some of the classification of Human in Biology, and that has been done by Carl Linnaeus in his major book called Systema Naturalia, where human beings called Homo sapiens, it has been classified, and these are the different classification of different races of people, and so let me come to a conclusion. So this slide, I think, may help you to understand posthumanism. Sophia is one of the robot which has been given citizenship. So we are entering into posthuman scenario, and so this is the argument that goes in terms of the present situation, like being a body, having a body. Such a phenomenological questions are rising in the minds of people. I'm having a body. Once again, the dualism. I think therefore I am. Cartesian dualism is being questioned, that I have this body and let me enhance this lifespan of this body. So this is the pertinent situation that persist human beings to utilize this technology. So the self is open and diffuse, and it is my body, the social body, the celestial body of planet Earth. So we are entering into the next stage of having a body and configuring and reconfiguring the body. That is the post-human state I have to mention. And towards the conclusion, these are the two questions I would like to raise here. What does it mean to be post-human in relation to other species? So the answer to this question is the line between human animals and non-human animals is not definitive. So we are always, the boundary is actually blurring. There is no concrete boundaries as far as post-human is concerned. We are deconstructing the boundaries, and so we are inviting all sorts of speciesisms to enter into, and there is a kind of a scope to enter into eco technology. So this is a new idea, new concept, that in post-humanism, how this post-human world enters into eco technology, where multi-species justice is entertained, and the concept called human animal. So in that eco technological world, how the human identity will be human animal. So I started with this identity in the beginning of my presentation. So this will be the identity in the postmodern world, human animal. So the next question I would like to ask is it time to say goodbye to the human? So now this post-human world is entered into a kind of a natural cultural co-evolution. Eco technology we have seen, prima human we have seen. All this kind of enhancements leads to this natural cultural co-evolution, which may bring the post-human era to an eventual integral epoch. So with this, I would like to end my presentation.
Thank you, Professor Gita. And, it was an absolute pleasure listening to the illuminating talk by Professor Gita. In fact, kind of when I was listening to the talk, I was immediately reminded of the place that post-humanism or transhumanism as a discipline has occurred within the broad field of critical humanity studies. We all know. I mean, probably from the 1990s, academia has been witnessing, the growing interests in critical humanity studies, as you know, blue humanities, digital humanities, animal studies, uh, uh, and many more. I mean, disaster literary studies and migration studies. So I think within this kind of growing field of academic interests, of course, this talk will provide us an insight into the broad trajectory that Professor Gita has kind of drawn out. Starting from the idea of humanism right from the Renaissance to the Enlightenment to the contemporary discourse. She has been very beautifully, kind of draw of the long trajectory that humanism, transhumanism, posthumanism, and many more trajectories in this particular line have been kind of explored. And also, I was kind of looking at the interdisciplinary potential that this particular field has. I mean, if you those who have listened to the talk, you will be completely awestruck by the interventions. It is not simply kind of literary or cultural interventions, but beyond that, technological interventions, interventions of gender studies, cultural studies, media studies, and also the philosophical studies. I mean, she has kind of reflected widely on Western intellectual traditions, particularly the philosophical traditions, drawing ideas from Derrida, from Foucault, and from others. And I'm sure that the students or the scholars, those who are interested to work in this particular discipline, I'm sure the talk will provide them, at least theoretically, open up many new ways of exploring. I'm sure that participants have been greatly benefited, and they will try to kind of reconsider, refigure this particular domain if they are interested to explore it for further research. And for the academicians, those who have those who are kind of interested to explore this new field, I'm sure that they will also be kind of educated properly by this talk. And with this note, I would like to invite or maybe kind of ask the audiences if you have a couple of questions, because we are running short of time. Yes, if you have a couple of questions, you can either directly ask or maybe you can write it in the chat box, whatever you prefer. Thank you.
Ma'am, may I ask a question if you allow?
Yes.
So, ma'am, since you talked about Anthropocene and there is this, you have given the example of Sophia, the citizenship of Sophia, right? So, I have a question that is, as we all know, that though she was given the citizenship, when it comes to acceptance, people did not accept her. So, if we talk about a symbiosis between human and non-human entities and they are living, cohabiting, so do you think that there is a possibility of a favorable outcome rather than what Sophia got? What do you think of a symbiosis between human and non-human entities?
See, the symbiosis is happening in as far as human ailment is concerned. We have been applying this. In fact, RFID, that is radio frequency identifier, is being implanted in human under this human skin. So this is something happening quite normally, especially in developed countries. So this chip will give you the entire detail about your medical conditions and other related issues also. So when we are planting such things into our body and other sorts of machines inside our body for our any sort of ailment, we are entering into a new phase of a life where there is feasibility for making such symbiosis to certain extent. That's what I said. No, like as far as it will not be harmful to any individual, it is entertained. If it is unethical, there we should question it. So we have to be critical. So that is a critical post-humanism. It is a different arena, where different discourse, where critical post-humanism questions about the ethical aspects of any sort of advancements happening, which will damage us, especially the animal world, as well as this human body. So symbiosis to what extent is what is we have to think about it. Otherwise, there is no harm in incorporating such scientific advancement for our own betterment. There is nothing harm in it, because we have already, without our consciousness, we have been into our life is being occupied by all sorts of technologies. So we are already into post-humanism world only.
Yeah, we can take
Thank
up
you so much, ma'am.
one or two questions, and maybe I will ask the participant to introduce themselves before they ask question.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I am Shonchari Chattopadhyay, research scholar from NIT Agartala, ma'am. And thank you for answering this question. Since I have known Sophia's ending, so I was a little bit curious about this take of
Thank you for
symbiosis. Thank you.
asking this question. Thank you for asking that question.
So, Sanchari, may I ask you to check the chat box if there are any questions?
Yeah, sure, sir. So as of now, I have not gotten any question in the chat box. If anyone else is interested, can raise their hands.
So, I think the participants are not interested to ask any more questions. Probably, you know, any question can we quickly take up if there is anybody?
So I think we have gotten the answers. She has elaborated very well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think it has been a really wonderful session, and personally and on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to compliment Professor Gita for this enlightening talk, and I would like to thank the organizers uh, uh, for having me here. And with this note, let me wind up the session. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you once
Th-
again for inviting me.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone. This concludes the session.
Okay, so this brings us to the end of the plenary talk, the 2 days plenary talk. Everyone who have a parallel session to attend, please join into your individual parallel session Google Meet room. We'll have the parallel session at in the evening today. We have a valedictory session 5 p.m. onwards. So those who are done with your presentation, please do join in at 5 p.m. for the valedictory session. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining, and thank you for being with us. See you some other time. Yeah, thank you.